Hello everyone and welcome to my Tampa Bay Lightning season preview for the 2023-2024 season. For those of you that don't know me, welcome. My name is Sammy. I make a lot of stupid stuff for the internet between Instagram and YouTube and Twitch, and part of that is I love talking about hockey. I decided that this was going to be the season. This would be the first time that I put in a true concerted effort to covering the Tampa Bay Lightning season from start to finish. Now, I realize that this is, of course, a difficult task. I don't get paid to do any of this. I'm not a full-time YouTuber or content creator, influencer, or any other sort of title that you can throw around there. And as much as I would love to sit here and pump out nothing but hockey videos on a daily basis and do a fan reaction after every single game of the Lightning a la Steve Dangle, it's just not realistic for me. What I am going to try to do is twofold. Number one, I'm going to try to make videos about the big news story topics as they concern the Tampa Bay Lightning throughout the season. And two, I'm going to attempt to do weekly recaps throughout the season, where I talk about the games that got played in the last week, what we have to look forward to, where I think the team is at the time of recording. You get the idea. And that all starts right now. The Tampa Bay Lightning are coming off a disappointing first-round series loss to the Toronto Maple Leafs, a series that, quite frankly, I still feel that Tampa outplayed Toronto in many aspects of that series. But in a certain manner of speaking, it was the end of what was a tremendous run of playoff success, sustained playoff success. It's not to say that they won't make the playoffs this year, because I certainly think that they will. It's not to say that they won't have success in the playoffs, because they're certainly capable of that. We've seen that over the course of the last 4 years. What it is to say is that since the 2019-2020 season, the Tampa Bay Lightning have played a lot of extra hockey. In that 4-year time frame, the Tampa Bay Lightning have played 77 playoff games. The next closest team to them is the Vegas Golden Knights at 61 games. The Vegas Golden Knights, who I remind you, just came off a Stanley Cup winning season. 15 games of difference doesn't sound all that significant until you realize that's basically an entire Stanley Cup run, provided that you sweep every single round of the playoffs. And when you remember that an NHL season is 82 games for a regular season, it highlights that the Lightning basically played an extra season of hockey over the last 4 years. But the silver lining in all of that is the Lightning finally had a chance to do in this offseason what they haven't been able to do in 4 years: rest. So let's start with what's happened during this offseason. It was a typical cap hell carousel throughout this entire offseason. We knew that was going to happen. The Lightning have been essentially paying a cup tax ever since that 1920 Cup. We can go all the way back to when we lost an entire third line in Yanni Gourde, Blake Coleman, Barclay Goodrow. And then we can talk about losing some of my personal favorites like Ryan McDonough. But this year saw the exit of both some fan favorites and some key pieces. These are names that are going to be missed, at least most of them. Starting off with Alex Killorn leaving Tampa in free agency and going to Anaheim. I can't say I blame him. Tampa couldn't pay him and he was due a big payday. Best of luck to you, Alex. I hope you do come back to Tampa at some point. Adding to that, the Lightning traded away Ross Colton, Corey Perry, Patrick Maroon, all trading for draft picks. Magic beans, essentially, because we don't know what they're going to turn into. And then to round it all out, losing more free agents in Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, in Brian Elliott, and Ian Cole. These moves did kind of have to be done, as much as I hate, well, some of them. 2 of them in particular. And with the exception of Alex Killorn, pretty much everybody that they lost was a depth piece. And anybody who has watched the NHL and watched Stanley Cup winning teams for any amount of time will tell you depth matters. But the unfortunate thing about the players they lost in the offseason is most of them were set to become free agents anyway. The Lightning didn't shed a ton of cap space with their moves, and they still have to address that going into this season. And since the pressing need was to help fill out the depth in the forward group, they go out and get Luke Glendening, Logan Brown, Connor Sheary, and Tyler Mott. And rounding out that group is defenseman Calvin DeHaan and goalie Jonas Johansson, who is gonna be important. We're gonna talk about that soon. As far as players that were already here, the Lightning ended up re-signing Tanner Jeannot to a fairly reasonable deal, and then they gave contract extensions starting next year for Darren Radish and Brandon Hagel. And if you'll notice, there's one very big, very important name that isn't on that extension list. And I know, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there, I promise. When you go through a kind of roster roulette that the Lightning did, and it happens to a lot of teams during the offseason, the immediate question that you're gonna ask is the team better now than when they ended the season or the postseason just a few months prior? that is a particularly difficult conversation to have right now for the Lightning because of the nature of who and how many names actually got lost. Look at the fourth line in particular. You are essentially trading Pat Maroon, Corey Perry, Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, and replacing them with Luke Glendening, Logan Brown, and Tyler Mott. Is that a trade that you necessarily want to make? I actually don't know, in part because it depends on what style of team you're trying to build. With that previous fourth line of Maroon, Perry, Bellemare, on the whole, what you wanted was for 45 seconds at a time for that line to make life a living hell for the other team. They were going to aggravate you, they were going to hit you into the boards, they were just going to make it not fun to play against. Can I expect the same thing out of Glendening, Brown, and Mott? The short answer is I don't know. From what I know about these players, I think they are responsible in the defensive zone, which is a very important thing. I think they are better forecheckers. I think you can rely on them to score a little bit more. But is it worth the trade-off? Because now all of a sudden, you don't have an instigator in Corey Perry. You don't have your goon, your enforcer in Pat Maroon. And when you put that entire line together, that's what they were good for. So in essence, what you're doing is trading away a physical presence and a psychological thorn in your side for the potential, and it's very important to say that it is potential, for more scoring and denying more opportunities for the other team to score. I think you kind of have to take that deal. And that's where the focus is going to be for this season for this team. It's going to be on the forward group. It's going to be specifically on the depth of the forward group. The blue line is in good shape. I would say it's probably even going to be better than last year because they have the benefit of rest this time around. Is the forward group better right now on October 4th than they were at the end of the postseason just a couple of months ago? From a potential scoring perspective, from a depth scoring perspective, I think the answer is yes. I think they have the ability to fill in those gaps and address the issues as to why Tampa couldn't beat Toronto in that last series. However, from a physicality standpoint, from a long postseason run style of hockey that you need to play to have success, I'm not so sure that that forward group is better now. Granted, I think it's a marginal step back, not a massive one, but a step back nonetheless. So with all that in mind, let's look at the lines themselves. Let's look at the projected starting lineup for opening night against Nashville. With the exception of losing Alex Killorn and inserting Connor Sheary, the top six is largely untouched. Stamkos, Point, Kucherov on the top line, that just makes sense. They've played together for years, they have the chemistry. It's arguably one of the best top lines in all of the NHL. Hagel, Cirelli, Sheary, I think that's a solid second line. Hagel and Cirelli are going to pick up right where they left off. I think Connor Sheary is going to fit in nicely to that line. All three of them are probably going to see power play time, most likely on power play number 2. And with the relative consistency and steadiness of those top six, it honestly wouldn't surprise me if you see plenty of flexibility in those top two lines. Basically, John Cooper likes to tinker as needs arise. So you might see Stamkos play on line 2 on the left wing. You might see him scoot over and center line 1 and drop Braden Point down to second line center. You might see Brandon Hagel move up. You might see Connor Sheary move up. We just don't know, but you know generally that those six, those are your guys. They're going to perform no matter who they're with. Michael Eyssimont, Nick Paul, and Tanner Jeannot on the third line. Look, these guys are pretty much a known quantity. They got to play together for a somewhat significant amount of time last year. I think the chemistry is going to continue to grow. I think it's going to be a good third line. It's not going to be great like that Gord Coleman Goudreau line is, and I really need to stop talking about it like that, but it's going to be a good line. And rounding out the bottom six in Logan Brown, Luke Glendening, and Tyler Mott. 3 brand new additions to the team. 3 players who have not played in this system, played under John Cooper. There's a lot of question marks here. And again, you can't help but compare it against the Maroon line from last year. As I said, I think that what you potentially gain is worth the trade-off here, but we're going to have to see how that plays out long-term and hopefully into the playoffs. But as it pertains to the beginning of the season, and especially on opening night, Logan Brown has been out with an undisclosed injury. We weren't sure if he was going to start the season on injured reserve or what was going to happen, but it has been officially announced that he has been sent down to the Syracuse Crunch in the meantime, which means that Alexander Barré-Boulet is most likely to slot into that last spot on the fourth line. Alex Barré-Boulet, he's 26 years old, signed his entry-level contract with the Lightning. signed his second deal with the Lightning, played a grand total of, I think, 2 games when he got claimed off waivers by Seattle, made his way back to Tampa. He's still making basically league minimum. He's going to be a serviceable asset on the fourth line, but it's his opportunity to shine because he will be a free agent at the start of next season. So if he wants to make a name for himself and get a bigger payday than league minimum, he's got a golden opportunity to start the season because we don't know how long Logan Brown is potentially going to be out. As I said, the blue line is largely untouched. They have the benefit of a full offseason worth of rest this time around, and I think that's only going to benefit them. First pairing of Victor Hedman and Nick Perbix. You know exactly what you're getting there. Victor Hedman, a seemingly perennial Norris Trophy candidate, even though he is getting older. The nice thing is that as steady as he is, he's starting to recognize his own limitations, and he's handing over some of the defensive leadership to Mikhail Sergachev, who signed a massive long-term deal, including Sergachev is now on power play 1. He spent most of last season on power play number 1, Hedman on power play number 2. I think Hedman is being smart about that, and he's got a team mentality. He's not being selfish with that position. Second pair of Mikhail Sergachev and Erik Chernak. Look, these are 2 big, mean guys. I can't wait to see what they do because I think they're going to make other teams very uncomfortable spending a lot of time in the boards. And I mean, as far as Chernak is concerned, maybe a lot of time in the box, but I think it's going to be a fun defensive pair to watch this season. In the third pairing, currently projected to be Calvin DeHaan and Zach Bogosian. 2 guys who are well fit to be on that third pairing. Bogosian has experience here in Tampa. He's a defensively responsible individual. I have no question that he's going to have success here. My question mark, though, is on Calvin DeHaan. Calvin DeHaan has historically been a good defenseman, and I think he would slot into a third pairing quite well. However, his final 2 seasons with the Chicago Blackhawks were not good. They were very not good. I know plus minus is a team stat and it doesn't always tell you the entire story, but in 2020, in 44 games with the Chicago Blackhawks, he posted a minus 16. The next season in 69 games, he posted a minus 21. Again, plus minus, bit of a team stat. Chicago, not a good team. So I think I can understand some of that. And you started to see he was turning the corner and he was much better on the defensive side of the puck playing for Carolina last year. In 53 games with the Carolina Hurricanes last season, he posted 2 goals, 10 assists, both of which I would be perfectly fine with from a third pair defenseman. But the important thing is that he got back on the plus side of the plus minus, going +7 in 53 games. Now again, Carolina is a much better team than Chicago. So how much of that was the team? How much of that was DeHaan? I really don't know at this point, but it's at least enough that it gives me hope, some cautious optimism, let's put it that way. In the crease, of course, you have the big cat, you have Andrei Vasilevskiy, who I am ready to put in the conversation for best goalie of all time. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself with that one, but look, he has an incredible track record. He's got 2 cups. He had that streak where in closeout games, he was something like 7-0 in the playoffs for a long time. And yes, I know Vasilevskiy is injured. We're going to get there. We're going to get there. Backing up Vasilevskiy and essentially starting for the first 2 months of the season, as of right now at least, is Jonas Johansson, a perennial backup. Johansson's numbers are, well, pretty much what you'd expect from a backup. Most recently, last season with the Colorado Avalanche, he played in 3 games where he posted a .932 save percentage and a 2.1 goals against. Sounds good, right? Well, in the season before that, he played 9 games with the Colorado Avalanche, posting an .885 save percentage and a .373 goals against, before going to the Florida Panthers, playing only 2 games where he posted a .766 save percentage and a .774 goals against. And I know that sounds bad, but it actually gets worse, because remember, that's the season that the Florida Panthers won the President's Trophy, 122 points in the standings. They were an offensive juggernaut. And they lost those 2 games with Johansson in goal to Montreal and Columbus. Yeah, that's bad. But what I will say is that in his last 2 games of this preseason, again, I know it's preseason, but he's posted 2 shutouts. Maybe he is going to gel with this team. Maybe he is going to be able to handle the responsibility of being a starting goalie for 2-ish months. We'll see. Third goalie at this point, I would have to imagine it's Hugo Onfelt. He's still on his entry-level deal with the Lightning. He's only seen 1 game of NHL ice. He came in relief during an absolute blowout loss. He saved 7 of 10 shots, and you just don't know what you're going to get, but Lightning drafted him for a reason. So, I don't know. Maybe he's going to see a couple games this season, particularly early on when presumably Jonas Johansson is taking over. Quick note on the power play. I think power play number 1 is just as deadly as it's ever been between Stamkos, Kucherov, Point, Sergachev, and adding in Hagel. I think it's still going to be, what do you do with that, right? As a penalty kill, as somebody playing defensively against that, what do you actually do against that power play? There isn't much. They're going to score more often than not. Power play 2, I got some question marks there because you lost Killorn from that one. You lost Perry, you lost Maroon. So I don't know truly what to expect when you're throwing in Tanner Jeannot. You're probably throwing in Connor Sheary and Nick Paul. At least you're going to have the steady hand of Victor Hedman quarterbacking that power play. So I think it's going to be okay, but probably not world beaters by any means. The penalty kill, though, that definitely needed to be addressed. On penalty kill number 1, I think the addition of Tyler Mott is exactly what they needed because he is a defensively responsible forward. Nick Paul is going to be fine on that one. Tanner Jeannot, they're putting a lot of faith in him. I don't know. I could see him moving in and out of the penalty kill depending on how he manages to step up or lack thereof throughout the season. All things considered, on paper, I think this lineup is playoff worthy. But the game isn't played on paper, is it? It's played on the ice. And so these guys have to go out there and they have to perform. They have to do the thing. They have to live up to the expectations and the standards that they undoubtedly set for themselves and that John Cooper and Julian Brisebois and Jeff Vinik and the whole Vinik family have set for them, as well as the expectations of the fan base in Tampa Bay and across the world. But this game is played by people, fallible people. This game is officiated by fallible people. These teams are run by fallible people, and there are plenty of things that can go wrong, including injuries and drama and so many other things. And with that in mind, there are 3 big questions that I have before the puck drops on October 10th against Nashville. Number 1, as I've kind of already alluded to, it's how is this team built right now? As I've already said, the core is still together. They're going to try to ride out this core as long as they can because let's not fool ourselves. Steven Stamkos is getting older. Victor Hedman is getting older. Nikita Kucherov is getting older. And even though the Lightning have established what the future core is going to be, they still want to maintain that competitive edge and have themselves in the conversation for a Stanley Cup year in and year out. And generally speaking, the style of team hasn't changed over the last 4 years, from winning the 2 cups to losing the next cup to getting bounced in the first round last year. The personnel changes, on the other hand, have dictated how the game actually gets played. Those first 2 Stanley Cup wins coming fresh off the loss to Columbus, the embarrassing loss to Columbus, that was the perfect storm combination of extreme high-end talent, dedicated depth scoring, responsible defensive play, and having one of the best goalies in the league, and having one of the best coaches in the league. In the next season, where they played Colorado for the cup and lost, you could just tell something was a little bit off. I think you can say the exact same thing for last year's Lightning team. I don't know how many Lightning fans went into that season expecting a Stanley Cup. I don't know how many of them went into the Toronto series expecting a win, but the general air that I got from the fan base was we knew the clock was ticking, and it seemed like if there was any team that was going to have an early exit, it was going to be that one. So what is this team actually built like going into the 2023-2024 season? They're building a speedier and smarter team, less of a physical, get a rise out of you kind of team. They're building the kind of team that, at least in my opinion, just screams, we don't need to finish first in the league. We don't need to finish first in the Eastern Conference. Hell, we don't even need to finish first in the Atlantic. As long as we do enough to get into the playoffs, we know exactly what switch needs to be flipped so that we can have success during another grueling Stanley Cup run. So you're not going to be overly physical. You're not going to intimidate people with your size necessarily, with the people that get under your skin. You're going to go out there and you're going to attempt to play a smart 60 minutes of hockey night in and night out. And when the game has to be physical and you have to throw some bodies, you know that you can do it, but it's probably not going to be your style most of the time. But the style of hockey that we've seen be successful in the playoffs in the last few years has been that physicality. You need to be able to grind out games. You need to be able to go into a series against a Carolina or a New York Islanders, teams that are notorious for scoring and then just parking the bus and playing defensive hockey. You need to go into games like that and recognize that you may have to score 1 goal and it's just going to be not a fun experience. It's going to be grueling. It's going to be hard fought. You're going to lose some teeth. You're going to take a lot of penalty minutes, but that's just the kind of style that wins right now. Do they have enough potential to play a physical game against those kind of teams and have success? We'll see. Question number 2, how will Andrei Vasilevsky's absence in the first 2 months of the season affect the team long term? Believe it or not, this is not the first time that the Lightning will go an extended period of time without their all-world goalie in Andrei Vasilevsky. In the 2018 season, the Lightning were without Andrei Vasilevsky for a little over a month due to injury. At the time, Louis Domingue was the backup, and all things considered, he did pretty well in that span. 1 month is certainly shorter than 2 months, and Louis Domingue is not Jonas Johansson or whoever they end up getting if they end up getting someone else. So it's not like we're comparing apples and apples in this one. All I'm really trying to say is that the core of this team has weathered that storm before, and they can provide leadership to the rest of the team, and they can do their very best to help out whatever goaltender they have in net for the first 8 to 10 weeks of this coming season. But then, of course, you have to start to think about what happens when Vasilevsky comes back. Is he truly going to be his old self? Is he going to be at 100%? Is the team going to suffer because of it? These are all giant question marks. But the team has to focus on the here and now and deciding if they're going to stick with Jonas Johansson for the first 2 months, or if they're going to go out and try to sign somebody who has starting experience, significant starting experience. I've heard names like Martin Jones and James Reimer be thrown around, and at this point, who actually knows what's going to happen? I think this is a period of time where the team needs to focus so incredibly much on their defensive play more than anything, because if you are irresponsible in your own zone, it doesn't matter if you have Vasilevsky or a guy playing his first game, it's not going to bode well for you. So is it going to affect the team? Absolutely yes. Is it going to be as big of a deal as everyone else is making it out to be? I'm not convinced. Obviously, I wish Vasy a speedy recovery. I want him back on the ice as soon as possible, provided that he's healthy. But in the meantime, I'm going to put my faith in whatever goaltender that John Cooper and the management decides is the guy for the Lightning to ride out those first 2 months. And last but not least is potentially the biggest question, not necessarily because of what it means for this season, but what it means further on down the road. It's been very big news that Steven Stamkos did not even get a conversation about a new contract during this offseason when he made it abundantly clear that that's exactly what he wanted to get. He walked into training camp, and on the first day with media and everyone available, he expressed his disappointment that not even a conversation had been had at that point, which I agree with him. Julien Brisebois responded with what is, I guess, typical him, but not what I expected when addressing the captain of the team, a guy who has meant so much to the city of Tampa and to the Lightning organization for as long as he has. Brisebois went on and on about how Stamkos needs to know that he's not the only player on the team and that there are salary cap issues in play, and he wants to wait it out and see how things go. But in that entire, however long it was, 3 to 5 minute conversation, Julien Brisebois didn't actually say anything meaningful. And it's not about what he said, it's about what he communicated. And what he communicated is that a fan favorite who might potentially be your best player in franchise history, a guy who has brought you 2 Stanley Cups, he's won the Rocket Richard, he has won the Marc Messier Award, and the communication was that Steven Stamkos is expendable. As a fan and somebody who is currently wearing a Stamkos jersey, that doesn't sit well with me. Look, I know that the NHL is a business like any other business, and you have to make tough business decisions. And Julien Brisebois is that kind of guy where he will be a little cutthroat if it means giving the team long-term success. And at a certain point, it almost crosses into that range of being robotic and unfeeling and uncaring about taking care of your guys who have definitely taken care of you and made sure that you have looked really good as a GM. I see basically one of 2 ways. Think of it more of a spectrum on how you want to run a team. You can either be that hardcore businessman on one side that says, I don't care about the player's personality, what they mean to the city, anything else like that, and you can start throwing away star players a lot like the Senators did with Erik Karlsson. Or you can be on the more players GM side of things and say, I want to take care of my guys because they've taken care of me. Think along the lines of a Kyle Dubas, who tried his very best to keep that core together in Toronto, even though it clearly wasn't working. And more often than not, I feel like the best method is somewhere in the middle. If Julien Brisebois wants to be that hard-nosed and robotic about dealing with players and contracts and all that, I understand doing that with basically half of the team, the pieces that you rotate in and year out as depth pieces. But it's different when you're talking about your core. It'd be different if you were talking about Vasilevsky or Hedman or Kucherov or Point or Sergachev or any of these players that you've invested in for the future. And it is certainly different when you're talking about the captain of your team, potentially the best player in Tampa Bay Lightning hockey, a fan favorite. What are you thinking? There's not even a conversation for that? You don't even want to give the man a courtesy of a phone call, a text message? Anything? Can't even reach out to his agent to say, look, Steven, things are difficult right now. We don't know what we're going to do, but we have heard your request and we're going to work on it as soon as we possibly can. Not even that, especially when it comes to a guy like Stamkos, who has been a team player and he has taken less money for the sake of having more for the team so that more pieces can be put around him. The entire organization is built on a roster that no one player makes more than $9.5 million per year. And your captain is on the lower end of that salary spectrum, by the way. I know Steven Stamkos is getting older. He's getting towards the end of his career. He's probably going to sign one more contract and he wants it to be in Tampa. I want it to be in Tampa. And I've heard rumors that apparently Stamkos wouldn't be missed, and I don't know how true or false that actually is or who's stoking that flame. I don't know. But there's a lot of drama surrounding the captain of the Tampa Bay Lightning as we're going into this season. He doesn't have a deal done for next season. He doesn't even have the beginnings of a conversation about a deal for the next season. So what does that do for this season? I could see it playing out in one of a few ways, but knowing Steven Stamkos, I think it's going to motivate him. Probably not the healthiest form of motivation, but I think it's going to motivate him enough to perform so that he does get that contract. And I think that performance is going to have to start off with a bang so that conversations can start to be had in, I don't know, January. Rest assured, if Stamkos puts up another 84-point season like he did last year, and the team has okay success in the playoffs, but Julien Brisebois is willing to punt that conversation further and further down the road, he's walking. Like, Stamkos is gone. And I wouldn't blame him for that. I wouldn't blame him one bit. If somebody is willing to pay him what he deserves to be paid and is willing to treat him with the respect and dignity that he deserves as a veteran in the NHL, as a superstar, as someone who has contributed to multiple cup runs, yeah, why wouldn't he go? I hope it doesn't turn into one of those scenarios where it's just a lot of this, or it's a lot of drama, and Stamkos is underperforming because of it, because the only thing on his mind is the contract negotiations, and the media won't leave it alone, and the team won't leave it alone. I hope that's not the case, because again, if that happens, he's going to underperform, and then there's no reason to have a contract extension talk with him. Okay, I think I'm calmed down now. I think. Nope, I'm not. Anyway, let's wrap this up. Where does that leave the Tampa Bay Lightning at the end of the regular season? I've already stated, I think the Tampa Bay Lightning are bound for the playoffs again. How they actually get there, I'm not so sure. I think this season, with a combination of how good Toronto is and Vasilevsky being out for the first 2 months, it wouldn't surprise me if Toronto wins the division because they get an early head start. That said, it wouldn't surprise me that Tampa finishes second in the division this year. I could see them finishing anywhere between second and fourth in the division, but still making the playoffs. My gut tells me that they will probably finish around second. They most likely will play Florida in the first round of the playoffs and then inevitably play Toronto in the second round, unless Toronto decides to be, well, Toronto again and lose in the first round. Please, 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 please. But as far as the potential for a deep cup run, I don't know. I haven't seen enough of this team play together yet to confidently say one way or another if they have what it takes to go the distance once again, even if they do have as much rest as they've been given this offseason. With that in mind, I'm going to wrap up the season preview, and I'm going to look forward to opening night against Nashville coming up in, that's right, 6 days. I've been looking forward to this season for so many months. I can't believe it's almost here. I'm so ready to go. Thank you for dropping by. Thank you for watching this video, giving me some of your time today. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a comment if you like. Let me know what you agree with, what you disagree with. My socials are freaking everywhere. You know the drill. I don't need to bore you with all that. But again, thank you so much for giving me some of your time today. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next week for the first week recap of the 2023-2024 NHL season. It's going to be a blast. Hope you're here for it.